All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the West Pittston Library's virtual poetry reading. It is 2021. This is our second virtual poetry reading and our third annual poetry reading. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us tonight and thank our amazing readers. This is celebrating National Poetry Month, and it actually combined perfectly well with National Library Week. So if you look behind me, we have our poetry is up with poems that you can take, poems for your pocket. We have our poetry collection is out and available. We also have a couple things for National Library Week. One of our pushes for this week is fine forgiveness. So if you have an outstanding fine on any West Pittston Library item, West Pittston Library items only, you can return them and we will erase your fine so you can get back in good standing with us. So we want to help you out, help us out, get our books back, and it works out for everybody. So you have until Saturday to do that. And obviously National Poetry Month is all month, so we'll have our poetry up all month. And then a couple little poetry things that you can grab, some movies based on poets and poetry, so that's exciting. If you go on our website or our Facebook, you are more than welcome, and we would be happy to let you donate to the library to keep our wonderful programs like this running. It takes a lot of coordination that works and sometimes doesn't work, but every little bit helps. And we have a great feature where you can add a monthly donation. So you can click the button, never have to think about it again, and donate a little bit every month to your favorite local library. And that's my introduction stuff. So I will introduce our lovely readers. Tonight we have Miss Abigail, who will be our first reader. We have Miss Bonnie. We have Zach. We have Stephen. And we have Micah and our director, David, who will be wrapping us up. So without further ado, thank you again for coming, and I will talk to you guys all after our lovely readers read. First will be Miss Abigail.
I'm going to do 3 poems. I wandered lonely as a cloud. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 I saw at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flashed upon my inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. By William Wordsworth. When the world is at odds and the mind is all at sea, then cease the useless tedium and brew a cup of tea. There is magic in its fragrance, there is solace in its taste, and the laden moments vanish somehow into space. The world becomes a lovely thing, there's beauty as you'll see, all because you briefly stopped to brew a cup of tea. Author Anonymous. Tea. Come, dear friend, the kettle calls and beckons us to tea. There's chai for you with scones and cream and Earl Grey hot for me. Come, dear friend, take tea with me. Let's drift among the stars. We'll waft around the universe past Jupiter and Mars. Come, dear friend, and rest a while when weary life leaves you. Just one small sip renews your soul. There's magic in the brew. By Tori Mosley.
Thank you, Miss Abigail. Bonnie, you are next. If you have any introductions, you are more than welcome to introduce yourself in any capacity that you would like.
Hi, I'm Bonnie. I teach at the University of Scranton, and I'm currently getting my MFA in poetry at Pacific Lutheran University. So I want to start with one of my current favorite poets, Alberto Rios. He uses a lot of magic realism in his poetry, and this, I thought, reminds me of my grandmother's kitchen. It's called Small Detective in a Quiet Kitchen. Lemon Squeezer, I met you at a business meeting for the first time. You were successful, let me say, in trying to impress me with your handshake. Napkin, You are paper now, but you come from a fine history of linen and circumstance. Your grandmother in the bosom pocket of a queen and the back pocket of a workman. Knife, everyone talks about your edginess, not sure what to make of you, but come here. You are flat, side, and good use, reformed criminal, friend so often. Potato peeler, tough guy, 2 knives perfectly wielded, biding your time. It's potatoes today and sometimes carrots, but with you, anything is possible. Colander, helmet after ferocious battle whose head you could not save, bullet holes everywhere. Even so, you are now peace itself, the steel plowshare made from sword. Rolling pin, trying so hard to fix the world, to turn it back, to find its perfect childhood, to make the world a single dimension, absent the complex, no bumps, a smooth home. Big bowl, you are the ocean itself, your rim the best beach in the world. In you swim the great whale potatoes, blowfish peas, carrot eels, place of strange familiars. Skewer cousin so clearly in the family tree of nails and needles and javelin swords, toothpicks and lightning rods for centuries. You have helped me and scared me both. Ladle, Big Dipper borrowed from the night sky. When I hold you, holding soup, the rice is so suddenly unmasked as what it really is, stars alive in great water. Can opener, your detective heart always searches to expose the underlying truth. You turn, turn, and turn until the cover is blown, its truth to the world at last revealed. And if I could read one of my own, this one was published in River and South Review, which is Wilkes University's literary journal. It's called The Last Beat of Summer. A symphony of freshness. There you are, between pippins, cortlands, bosks, the usual dull fall fruit, assembled like a majestic choir, unapologetically singing, "We're still here." Peaches. Cheeky, yellow, red, fuzzy, vine ripened, the last tune of summer. I bag 6. Days pass. The morning, chilly enough to turn on the heat. I had forgotten, but the others did not. I find you alone in the fridge. I reach gingerly, sing you, hold you like a fragile note, just a quick, light squeeze. My heart flutters. You're ripe to the touch. I bring you to my mouth. You smell peachy. A good sign. I bite quickly. My teeth shock, like plunging into a cold pool. Your skin cracks beneath my teeth. Your flesh is soft. It oozes its juice, runs down the length of my arm, and I lick, smiling. As yellow leaves fall on dying grass, I tap my toes to the last beat of summer. And I'll do one more, my first attempt at a quarantine poem. It's called Quarantine. Rotten clock, tick-tocking, mocking. I have nothing more to cook, clean, plan. Weak on mechanical weak, choke like a winter creek, trying to mumble through chunks of ice blocks, pushing, bumping against each other like bears, driving every tense muscle against a tree after hibernation. Us tripping over our lives, us tripping on lies that were fine like bone china, sweeping up dates that fell off the cute calendar clock, the cat calendar. And now the storm, the suffocating storm, trying to quell my creek, impatient to swell up and flood, cakes me inside with black curd, mud clogging a straw, clusters of molting hawks scratch my brain to feathers, flying quickly out where I cannot be.
Yay! Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Zach, you are next. And again, if you'd like to introduce yourself in any way, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Zach. I'm up the Susquehanna River in Falls. I had some other things planned, but I watched that Raoul Peck documentary last night, The Extermination of All the Brutes. So that's kind of where my mind is, colonialism and things like that. So reading some poems about that, and some of it's mine, some of it is, favorites. So I'm starting now with Chris Nealon from The Shore. The poem is called White Meadows. Starts with a quote by the poet Heriberto Yepes. There are no meadows in the mind of the oppressed. There are only slums, factories, forced labor fields, border detention facilities, Guantanamos, Abu Ghraibs, cops, devastated streets and jails. Or, as I remember reading it, what is up with white poets and meadows? It's like there's a scrap of glory in me I was asked to keep safe while the world goes to hell. Or like everyone has one. Or like the world has always been hell. Or like some parts are lovely because the other parts are hell. I grew up in the suburbs of a lovely part. It was just really a housing tract. Let's call it White Meadows. But I grew up and I wrote some poems. I got a few sweet emails about them. I really like the pop culture and the gay stuff references in your poetry. They were poems about cities, poems about meadows, poems about, let's call it the global north, but the slums and the suburbs. All through the 80s and 90s, I tried to fathom this. Finally, it led me to the avant-garde. Whoops. Was it always an analogy to speed? But speed is just a fear suppressant. Slow yourself down and it rushes back in. Every time North America feels unsafe, others get killed abroad. There's something that North America critical agents need to learn. It's to feel unsafe. I see that I'm frequently unsafe to others. But when I feel unsafe, which is kind of always, it's not because I worry that a brown person's going to steal my stuff. It's because the violence I grew up seeing and repressing, the violence done to black people, to brown people, to poor people, to women. I never saw a guarantee that I would be spared the same. Of course, you could say that every day of my life has been that guarantee. Like, who are you kidding, white boy? But a child doesn't know that, so something worse happens. You develop a fear of being brought into contact with the violated. Your very desire to help people becomes a barrier to knowing them, since you're afraid you couldn't offer actual solidarity, and you probably couldn't. Of course, this is narcissistic, like children are, and it factors out the courage and the buoyancy of the oppressed. But relying on an image of the courage of the oppressed is just a way to say Godspeed and be done with them. Ethics, man. You can't think your way out of this. You can't feel your way out. You sure can't write your way out. In the North American suburbs, we used to ride our bikes around when school was out. It was hilly. There were nooks and hollows where adults would never go. You'd lay down your bike and, I don't know, make up stories, sing under your breath. It had a lawless, world-receiving feel to it. I rarely feel normal, but I remember being happy. Heriberto, I would have liked to ride bikes with you, but you were busy having the childhood that afforded mine. Maybe they made you waste your intellect on building some toy I played with mindlessly. Maybe you assembled my bicycle chain. But up here, we are slowly becoming the Rust Belt. And you, all those hits the peso took just to help the coked up ravening dollar, you were becoming the avant-garde. Anuit Coptus, the Aeneid, 9.625. The young Ascanius, inexperienced in battle, but hungry for glory. The full hexameter translates, omnipotent Jupiter, favor my audacity while I try to kill this kid. Paulo rushes in for high fives once he's down and claps our hero on the shoulder. And that, my boy, is the path to the stars. Fast forward to the founding of Alba Longa. Also to every soldier who's ever told me I owe him for my freedoms. As opposed to owing my freedom to like 3 million slaves. Anyway, Ascanius got his. There's nothing left of Alba Longa after the Romans got angry. Now it's just a suburb. This one, this cup peach on the table. This one, this cup peach. This is the one. This is the one I will enjoy without believing I actually deserve it. Good faith on credit. That's the North American dream. The history of dreams. In the childhood history of bumping into the dream's back door. The rejected awareness that your whole life was built, as your parents' lives were, on the back of others elsewhere. That your suffering, while not less for this, did in the least exonerate you from supporting the design by which an infant misery was built up to cushion you. The history of the dream's design. That's the history of you becoming white. There's a corner of the UC Berkeley campus called the Faculty Glade. I used to cross it sometimes when I taught there, on my way to the Cafe Strada. It's not far from Sproul. In June, I heard some music there to address the Anthropocene. It was an interesting blend of drone sounds and kinds of flourishes in brass that spelled inauguration. To me, this meant it was kind of a sunrise song, but not for any single sunrise. Anyway, everybody listening was white. The musicians were arranged at the Glade's perimeter, I think to give the audience a comforting sense of being embraced by Earth. White people picked their way contemplatively among the seated, and if you listen hard, beneath the drone sounds and the trumpet flourishes, you could hear the sounds of protest from 500 feet away. And that was the sound of the Anthropocene. Murder, 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 peaceful droning. Listen, I don't blame John Luther Adams for writing this terrestrial music. I'd like to see Alaska someday, but I have to say, against the backdrop of the agony in Sproul, all those contemplative expressions look like signs of debility. Heriberto, I imagine only history will tell me what it's mine to recite. Will only tell me when it's mine to recite the names of the murdered in my poems when I don't know them. I don't want to make it worse. Many meditations separate me from the political dead, but I don't know how many separate you from yours. But if it's not mine to name them in whatever genre this is, I need to learn the contours of the genre in which I could, especially if it's not poetic. This past week, on the spongy floor of a meadow by the sea, we scattered the ashes of Patrick Baroque. He was a friend and a mystery to me. He had a technician's way of taking pains and a saboteur's talent for the mischievous. And Lord, he hated office work. He was a spangle in a box of buttons, if you know what I mean. He made a video of me once at Bedlam Coffee in Seattle, reading The Dial, which took 15 minutes. I tried to lose myself in the ambient sound, but they had turned off the music. I tried to focus on the camera's little tripod, but I got more self-conscious as I read. And when I got to the end, he said, "Perfect. Now let's do it again." So, Heriberto, the internet tells me you plan to quit writing poems. I'm going to miss your mischief. I'm going to miss your underworlds, rotated 90 degrees, those Homeric journeys when you have to sneak over walls. This summer on the Russian River, I picked up a copy of Lorca Translations, and I came across a line toward the end of Ode to Walt Whitman, where he writes, "Una danza de mueros, agita la praderes." Sorry for my Spanish. Anyway, I thought of you, or I thought of us, on either side of the walled-in meadows. For Lorca, Whitman is the right kind of man, national. In this admiration, he resembles nothing so much as the gay men I know. But there's another poem. When I think of their two deaths, it breaks me. I have no illusions about hybridity. I know no hybrid poetry can bridge the gap between the flowered procession and the unmarked grave. I know there's no right ratio between the peso and the dollar, any more than there's a fair price for a loaf of bread. Bread should be free, children should flourish, and I can't believe I have to say this, Guantanamo should burn to the ground. Normally I'd add, in its place, there should spring up a meadow, but I can almost hear you smack your forehead. It's not your job to find me a better ending. They already have. History's not cynical, but its form is scroll-like, far-flung words and letters warped into relation. Scrolls are full of wormholes. So I'm stripping this poem, not of rhetoric, of self, but of its wish to end. It cannot end. It can only get smaller, small enough to worm from recto to verso. I'm down to one-line stanzas and a scrap of glory here. I'll see you on the other side. And just moving on, I found this. I was in Buffalo at the Albright Knox Museum before quarantine. Maybe it was January of 2020, and I saw an exhibit there, and actually, I don't remember the name of the exhibit, but I took down the listing, the description paper that you get when you walk into a gallery, and I made a poem of trying to think of the form here. It's an erasure. I erased the text and took the words that were left. I wish I had the original blacked out document here, but this is what I left Che, surveyor of original wallpapers, or Laura. What aesthetics convey atrocity? In Vengeance, walls are revealed dialogue. Exquisite, horrific, historic. The 30 early atrocities of Carlo Francisco. A human improvises rubrics established on agonized bodies, extracted from and assembled to form a disturbingly decorative wallpaper. Landscapes from vacated torture devices. Callow, ambivalent retributions is often the key. The temporary aestheticization quickly becomes invisible. Despite the violent humans on the earth, history could easily become memory and alive as atrocity in the present. Depart and work across the walls. Wallpapers, 1592 to 1635. All right, I think that'll be it.
Yay! Thank you so much, Zach. Stephen, you're next.
I am?
Yeah, are you ready?
Okay.
All right, so make sure you're nice and clear.
Okay.
Read the title.
Days of the Week, A Mother Goose Rhyme, adapted by Sarah Buffington. Monday's child is fair of face, Tuesday's child is full of grace, Wednesday's child is ever so sweet, Thursday's child is tidy and neat, Friday's child is prone to giggle, Saturday's child is easy to tickle, but the child that's born on Webster Sunday is happy and cheerful and loves to play. That was the end of the fourth poem. Mr. Nobody by Anonymous. I know a funny little man, as quiet as a mouse, who does the mischief that is done in everybody's house. There's no one ever sees his face, and yet we all agree that every plate we break was cracked by Mr. Nobody. 'Tis he who always tears the books, leaves the door ajar. He pulls the buttons from our shirts and scatters pins of all. That squeaking door will always squeak for pity, don't you see? We leave the ironing to be done by Mr. Nobody. The finger marks upon the door by none of us are made. We never leave the blanket closed so that the curtains fade. The ink will never spill. The boots are lying around, I see, are not our boots. They all belong to Mr. Nobody. The Little Bird, also a Mother Goose rhyme. Once I saw a little bird come hop, hop, hop. So I cried, little bird, will you stop, stop, stop? And was going to the window to say how do you do, but he shook his little tail and far away he flew. And my final poem is Pangolbon. I and Pangolbon, my cat, 'tis a like task that we are at. Hunting mice is his delight, hunting wolves I sit all night. Better fall in praise of men, 'tis to sit with book and pen. Pango bears me no ill will, you two plies his simple skill. 'Tis a merry task to see at our tasks how glad are we, when at home we sit and find entertainment to our mind. Oftentimes a mouse will stray in the hero Pango's way. Oftentimes my keen thoughts set takes a meaning in its neck. Against the wall he sits, his eye full and fierce and sharp and sly. Against the wall of knowledge I all my little wisdom try. When our mouse doth from its den, oh how glad is Pango then! Oh with gladness do I prove when I solve the doubts I love. So in peace we task we ply, Pangolbon, my cat and I. In arts we find our bliss, I have mine and he has his. Practice every day has made Pango perfect in his trade. I get wisdom day and night, turning darkness into light.
Yay, good job. Slide over. Look, it's clapping for you. All right, Micah, you're our next reader.
Hello. I am Micah. I am going to read a poem by me and some poems by Naomi Shiabnai. I'm reading one from my chapbook, my Dan Ice chapbook. This poem's called Tools. Some of the patients had a few screws loose, which is not to say they were broken forever. They only required the right tools to put them back together. A kind man came into the room each day for group therapy. He taught us how to use tools in the real world. He had a brilliant analogy for teaching us the tools. Think of a nail sticking out from a piece of wood. If you tried to use a wrench to pull out the nail,
Micah, I think we lost you for a second
schools
there.
today had answered that he wanted to watch football, said he knew about tools. I built a shed once. We used to hammer to pound nails into the wood and purr together. We had to use a screwdriver to hang the hinges so the door would swing. Yeah, I got tools back home, good tools, and I know how to use them. I can't wait to get back and build something again, something as beautiful as that shed. So now I'm going to read some poems off my phone here. This is Bears by Naomi Shiabnai. At breakfast, we're discussing what to do if you meet a bear. Sometimes you run, sometimes you stand still and shout, so the bear will think you're bigger. Bears are great from a distance, ambling with cubs on a mountain trail, frolicking beside the train track. If you're safely inside the train, Grandpa Bear rising up from a distant cave, stretching out his limbs after months of hibernation. We saw one in Maine while trying to see a moose. Okay. And I want to read one more poem. How do I know when a poem is finished? When you quietly close the door to a room, the room is not finished. It is resting temporarily, glad to be without you for a while. Now it has time to gather its balls of gray dust, to pitch them from corner to corner. Now it seeps back into itself, unruffled and proud. Outlines grow firmer. When you return, you might move the stack of books, freshen the wire for the roses. I think you could keep doing this forever, but the blue chair looks best with the red pillow, so you might as well leave it that way. Thank you.
And that's it, Micah?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
It's all right. We weren't sure. It's okay. Your audio unfortunately cut out just a little there, but you're okay.
Okay.
All right, and we're going to wrap this evening up with our director, David, reading his poems.
Thank you. And thanks again, everybody coming tonight. Kendra mentioned earlier, and she'll probably mention again before we go, that this is National Library Week, as well as National Poetry Month. And I'm so proud of this staff, working so hard this last year to be able to serve the community and doing programs like this virtually and bringing in readers from all over the place. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. And also, Bonnie, when you were mentioned River and South, Don Lees and Jennifer Judge, really good people from Kings. And they were here when we had our first poetry reading live 2 years ago. So that was great. It was wonderful to have both of them here. And I can't remember if Jennifer read. I know Don did it, but Jennifer was definitely here in support. And Zach really appreciated. What was the name of the book you were reading from, or was it a journal?
It's from Chris Neal and The Shore.
Okay.
Wave books.
Definitely going to look that up. And bringing Wordsworth to the table right off the bat. Thank you, Abigail. That was wonderful. I love the poem about the daffodils. It was wonderful to hear that. And Stephen doing an awesome job, as always. Who wrote the poem about the cat? Was it Pangolin and I? Don't know. It sounded very much like T.S. Eliot's one of his poems about cats, but I wasn't sure that it was.
It's an anonymous, written in the margin of a Bible in
Wow.
times. So
That's
unknown monk wrote
awesome.
it, and Seamus Heaney.
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah, Seamus Heaney, a great Irish poet. And speaking of great German-Irish poets, Micah, who is now stuffing his face, I won't make you say anything. I don't have my last name up here on the screen, but you heard Kendra say it if you don't know me already, David Bauman. So when he said about the chapbook with his dad, oops, your screen kind of froze there, so I don't know if we've lost you. There we go. Hold that cover up. I know it's really dark in that room to see it. We did put a chapbook out, and I'm going to read one of my poems from it too. Do you still have it there in front of you, Micah?
Oh,
yeah. Hold it up, because I haven't gotten my copies yet. We were, yeah, it's hard to see on the screen there, but we'll hopefully have a. Let me see. I have a copied off version that you can kind of see the artwork sort of there by our friend Michael McFarland. And the book is called Mapping the Valley, Hospital Poems, father-son thing. It's a specially hand-sewn chapbook. So I'm not sure how it's going to be for, it's by Seven Kitchens Press. And I'm not sure how it's going to be for circulation. We have my first chapbook, Moons, Roads, and Rivers. You can check it out. Because that one's can take a little more beating. It's got perfect bound, but we'll have one here, at least for the collection, if it doesn't go into circulation. So anyway, that's just my thanking everybody here for reading tonight. You mentioned, Zach, about about changing the direction you were going, and so listening to your poems had me changing my direction a little bit. I wanted to read a little bit of Mary Oliver, and I'm still going to, but I'm going to read something that I didn't think I was going to read, because she has, this is probably the most read poem of hers ever, but you know, it probably is for a reason, probably because it's one of her best and most loved, and it's one that has meant a lot to me. And you were talking about it's funny because I was saying sometimes I feel guilty about writing so much about moons, roads, and rivers, or meadows, and Mary Oliver is known for that as well. But I've been doing a lot of reading this year, and also a lot of bird watching and reading about people actually watching bird migration in the city, not just in Central Park, but actually, you know, falcons nesting on buildings downtown, you know, or red-tailed hawks, you know, that kind of thing. And just coyotes. Now I'm listening, just finished listening to the audiobook by Dan Flores called Coyote America, and how coyotes, even in New York City, and I've often thought that one of our mistakes is in thinking that we're somehow separate from the natural world. We're natural creatures ourselves, you know? And so the coyotes have found that out, are in the cities, and so are the birds. And they're flying over, you know, whether you see them or not. But this poem is called Wild Geese. You might know this already, by Mary Oliver. I was going to read something else, but one of her books was that I was going to read from was luckily checked out today, so that's good. Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you about mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. And I wanted to read something by her because she kind of shows up in this half surreal poem from our little chapbook. We see this signs for this little restaurant, sometimes on the long drive between my place and Micah's. And so the poem is called End of the Trail Cafe. Driving through woods after waterfalls and birds, we see the sign. Wouldn't it be nice, you say, if every trail had a cafe at the end? Yes, I nod. A place where all good hikers go eventually. A quiet establishment with wide windows that look out on the last waterfall, where white-eyed vireos and black-backed orioles, rarities who never made our life lists, dart among the long-gone giants, the towering hemlocks and the red and willow oaks and mountain ash. Maybe a barista in white pouring coffee for an old man in green slacks, his hound dog drowsing beneath the table. The famous old poet taking in the view like she always did, jotting in a notebook the poem to follow her final verse. I think of the backpacker concluding her trek, the runaway who took that last treacherous step, the neighbor who ambled off into the forest, never to be seen again. Our mutual smile turns to a sober glance between us. I keep driving, and silently we agree, this is not the place for us, not yet. Something in the movement of the cool air beneath the trees today, something in the sound, the rush and drip of water on and over stone, the taste of rock and pine and mist upon our tongues has closed our mouths to savor it a while. Just before dusk, there were two small birds flitting from one side of the stream to the other, too quickly for us to identify in the glen's dappled shadow, until one landed and signaled with his tail, called to the other, who sang out her own name in reply. And that's from Mapping the Valley, proud to have co-written that with Mr. Micah Bauman. And I guess that's the last of us this evening. You know, we do have a bird walk coming up. So I'm going to throw in one last Mary Oliver poem since it's a short one. I kind of forgot I was going to do this one. During the pandemic, it seems like even when we were able to get out on the trails, I didn't want to go to some of the ones where I thought I was going to be running into a bunch of people. I just, whether it was the stress or not wanting to be breathed on or what, I just decided I was going to hike along the scrubby woods along the river between my house and the railroad track. And so I did a lot of bird watching there, and mostly by myself. And so I think what she's saying here when she says how I go into the woods. Ordinarily, I go to the woods alone, with not a single friend, for they are all smilers and talkers and therefore unsuitable. I don't really want to be witnessed talking to the catbirds or hugging the old black oak tree. I have my way of praying, as no doubt you have yours. Besides, when I am alone, I can become invisible. I can sit on the top of a dune as motionless as an uprise of weeds until the foxes run by unconcerned. I can hear the almost unhearable sound of the roses singing. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And don't forget WPLibrary.org. You can click donate now and help us out during Library Week.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.